interesting. Um, the one thing that you have to, Ray just mentioned it. There is an entity, a source of information called First Research. Once you identify the industry that you're going to go into, become familiar working with First Research. It costs you nothing. The libraries provide that. Maybe in the college have it. I don't know, Ray. But try to do that and then find the type of business you want to eventually create. And this is going to give you benchmarks for every element of the business. Okay. And try to mirror your budget to those benchmark that First Research is providing for you. It's also going to give you, years ago, I remember I had to do industry research. My gosh, I had to spend 2 or 3 days in the library to know something about the industry that I was looking at. I remember I did a project at UCLA. We needed to compare two companies. Uh, we needed to compare IBM and Apple, and who's going to survive and how. Okay. Well, we bankrupt Apple in this project because the direction that Apple was carrying, and Apple was near bankruptcy at one time. It was salvaged, but IBM was such a powerful entity. So in our project, we did bankrupt Apple, and IBM was a survivor. Fortunately, Apple picked up the pieces when they were down in the dumps, and look at the company that they are today. But I spent about 3 or 4 days researching both Apple and IBM. If I had the resources of First Research at my disposal today, I could have done that in one day. But keep that in mind. You're not going to go into that detail like the project that I'm telling you that I was involved, but nevertheless, I give you an idea of the industry you're going. Budget. Don't try to impress anybody with your budget except yourself. You want to make it challenging, but you want to make it reachable. Okay, you don't want to set a goal as I'm going to sell 10,000 widgets a month. If you don't know the industry, if you don't know how the industry behaves, I'm going to walk you through certain things that you need to know for pricing, which also apply for budgeting. Uh, there is, uh, as you do the budgeting, keep two things in mind. You have an operating budget, number one, and you have a capital budget, number two, or vice versa. It could be either way. Okay. But in both cases, you got to know what the sources and uses of funds is going to be. Do not load your business at the beginning with pre-opening capital, okay, that is going to kill your business at the beginning. And as Ray mentioned briefly, keep in mind that most business, the first 3 or 4 months, you're going to be in the red. So if you anticipate in your monthly operating projections that your budget that you're going to be in the red, that amount that you determine to be negative, capitalize that amount up front. That means after the end of the first month, second month, you don't have to be running around looking for money. You have it there on reserve. No problem. If you don't use it, more power to it. If it was a loan, pay it back. If it was capital, put it back to the bottom line. Is business never has too much capital. And I tell you, those companies that went through the pandemic will tell you that never enough capital in a business. This has been, you have lived through the most dramatic, challenging, but at the same time, educational experience that a business entity can go through. One of the things that I've always asked of when somebody's presenting a business plan to me, he says, give me what if scenarios of your business. And I think I talked to you about this last time, but I repeat it. I said, what? And I asked for two. You could give me three. What two drastic things can happen to your business that is going to bring it down to its knees? And most people say, well, if I die. I said, no, 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 no. If you die, we collect on the insurance policy and the business keeps moving. That's not going to be the problem. The problem is if you don't die, you become physically incapacitated. Who's going to run the business? Well, maybe my wife or maybe my husband. Do they know the business? Do they know how to run the business? No. I said, why don't you set up a strategy? And that's the reason I ask those questions. I want the individuals to come to me with a strategy as to, if that was to happen, what is the best way to do it? And that's planning, that's budgeting, that's part of budgeting. And what you say, if you do it today, when everybody's healthy, when everything is well, you know, if the day happens, I hope it never happens, but the day happens, immediately you know what to do. You can tell somebody, go to this place, and there's a strategy to run the company if I'm not in there. That's an important part of it. And so let's, as I said, budget has to be conservative. Keep in mind that when you do budgeting, I personally, and different people vary in this opinion, I like to start from the bottom. I like to start from say, how much money do you want to make? First of all, what business do you want to be in? How much you know about the business, what is the industry, and so on and so forth, and how much money you want to be in. I personally think competition is the last thing that you ought to do when it comes to pricing, but it's an important thing to do when you're designing your budget. The budget and the business plan go hand in hand. So competition is important. You want to know what are you going to be competing, and what you need to do to compete and build it up into the budget. Um, as I said, be conservative and make sure that your budget is well tested. Play the numbers. Once you have a budget, play the numbers. Run a couple of months. Compare that to the industry. Who's selling 1,000 units a month? Well, only a handful of people. Well, what makes you think that you're going to sell 1,000 units a month? Be, as I said, be conservative, be realistic in your plan. One of the things that Ray mentioned that is going to be very good and is going to help you a great deal as you go along the preparation of budgets and operational forecasts. There is a room, and I know Ray will build a lot that way. I have it in the projection template that I provide our clients. As you putting down numbers, put it at the bottom immediately. What make you arrive to that number? And if it's based, let's say, it's based on a price of $5 a unit, and I'm planning to sell 1,000 units in first month, 1,000 units, set that pricing in a formula. That means if you want to play different scenarios, all you have to go to that cell, okay, in that template and change from $5 to $6, from $5 to $4. See what's going to do to my entire picture. Be efficient in the way you design your template. Don't try to have to go back and change, a bunch of numbers. So as many formulas as you can put, the better. As I said, the templates that I use are very formula based, and so it's very easy to play different scenarios. And I do that with customers sometimes when they say, "Well, I'm going to sell this." Well, what about if you sell this less? Well, you're not going to cover all the fixed expenses of the company. You cannot operate this business at this level of expenses with this volume of sales. So allows you to play that. Okay, let's talk about. Go ahead.
Gonzalo, real quick, just mentioning, first research is something that I'll walk through. We walk through the students through, but we're going to walk through again, make sure everyone gets a first research report based on their business.
Yeah.
But the important thing, you mentioned competition. The first research data is based on the competition in an industry. So that's what makes those guides so important, is because they're not only talking about the industry, but they're giving you the financial ratios of companies within that industry. So it's great research because it allows you to compare yourself, both industry as well as your budget, against all your competitors. So it's really important.
I'm going to touch on some very general concepts that you need to keep in mind when pricing. Then I'm going to share with you. I cannot share on the screen, but I can share with you verbally of a very detailed pricing methodology that I put in place in one of our clients. And one of the reasons I did that is because after I spent some time with them, I realized that there was a bleeding in the company, a major bleeding in the company. And the owner, who's not very uh, versed with numbers, he's a great engineer, great engineer. He can design a part from you in 5 minutes. But when it comes to numbers, matter of fact, I spoke to him this morning. He's finally admitting to me that he doesn't know numbers. Finally, but so what I did is I realized there was a bleeding, and I didn't know what the bleeding was. Well, the bleeding was in pricing. He was not charging what he needed to charge. He had the basic fundamentals. Oh, I paid this much for a part. I think it cost me too much to produce, so much to produce it. Therefore, if I put another 15% on top of that, I'm making money. No, no, no. He was losing 15 cents for every dollar he sold. 15 cents for every dollar he sold. Okay. Uh, I don't have him there yet. He's getting closer. He's getting closer. It's funny because he showed me a model today that he said, I have a gross margin of 52 cents. I says, in your life, you have not had 52 cents gross margin. The best your company ever had was 48 cents. And I told him where it was 2018. And he said, how do you know that? I said, look at the numbers. You never look at your numbers. And he says, oh, that's right. I said, you're spending 52 cents in operation, and you're working out of a 49 cents gross margin. Where are the other 3 cents per dollar are going to come from? Well, I don't know. I said, well,
and I think back, Gonzalo, to something that you said the last time you talked to the class is there's sort of two things to think about. There's accounting for your costs and properly figuring out what your margin is, how much profit you're going to have. And then the other part to pricing too is, and you've mentioned this, is value. Base it on the value and know what's driving value within your price, because you can leave a lot of money on the table.
Perfect. You got to differentiate your company versus the competition on value. Okay, never forget that. Do not compete, exclusively on pricing, because you're going to kill yourself. Eventually, you will kill yourself. You got to build value. You got to reinvent your company. Right now, we were talking about this morning at a meeting that we had. How many customers have done better now that they did prior to the pandemic? Why? Because they didn't sit there and cry. They said, how do I reinvent my company? Okay. So many of them are doing much better now. So they set themselves for the future. One of them is a woman who owns a restaurant. She was doing okay before, but all of a sudden, when this thing came up, she said, I got to structure my business for delivery. And that's what she did. She structured the whole thing for delivery. She reduced the operating serving costs. She increased some costs for delivery. She was not using independent delivery services. She created her own. Well, I tell you, now all of a sudden, I was there 2 weeks ago. The line outside the door for people to come in and take out. It was incredible. Incredible. I couldn't believe it. So you gotta, but she did that. She created that. And so by reinventing, don't if you're going to own a business, don't sit back and says, oh wow, I'm making 20% a year, I'm great. No, because guess who's looking at those numbers too? Your competitor. And your competitors is going to eat you alive the moment that they know they can make 20 cents on a dollar on the similar type business. So don't be complacent with your accomplishment in the business. It's an ongoing thing. It could be very lucrative, it could be very good, but don't be complacent. Okay, so
to kind of add to that, Gonzalo, real quick. So to let the class know, I did a study up and down the state of California on businesses going through the peak of COVID. And we had 21,000 responses. And one of the questions we asked them is, did you innovate? Did you innovate your price? Did you innovate your service? Did you innovate to adapt to COVID? Did you do something different during COVID to try to innovate your business, to try to rethink it? And what was really interesting was you'd think everyone would, but only 45% of everyone who answered the survey said they innovated. What was interesting though, the ones that innovated, their sales either stabilized or went up. The ones that said they didn't, their sales went down. So again, that's just reinforcing the what you just said about rethinking your business and how some businesses actually did better.
Here's a perfect example today. Okay, and let's use the food service industry, the restaurant. Okay, minimum wage has gone up from 10 to 12 and soon to 15. If you don't up your prices, you're going to have a problem. Okay, so you got to be on top of that, and probably on top of that before you have to provide additional salaries to the people. You may have to do it a month ahead of time. And guess what people are going to say? They're going to complain. That's fine. Don't worry about it. Your service has to be there for, especially in a restaurant. The quality of the food, it has to be there. Your personal attention more than ever. We talk about reinventing. Well, now that I got to do, every time you make a drastic change in the business, your personal visibility in front of the clients is paramount. It's tremendously important. Okay, people like to know why, and if they don't remember, if you tell them, you know what, this my cost went up here in the salary, my cost went up in the taxes, my this and that. Oh, that's okay, I understand, because everybody's going through the same thing. But do not ignore and up the prices, and do not sell it. You got to sell it. That's very important. We talk about researching the industry, very important. You got to identify. Now I'm going back into pricing. You got to identify what is your target market. Oh gosh, I cannot believe how many people. Not too long ago, I have one that comes and says, "I want to open a bakery." Where you want to open a bakery? This particular, I think I can say it because it never opened, so no problem. Is Port Wanimi. I said, "What kind of bakery is a uh, is is a is a style of bakery from a European country. I'm not going to say which one." I says, "How many? What is your market in of that kind of individual that will probably be the ones attracted to this particular products that you're going to design in within your 10-15 mile radius?" I don't know. Who are you going to sell to? Who are you going to market these pastries to? All the breads and all that. If what you're building is tailored to this particular community, once they have it, they can show it to friends. Then friends come in and buy it. But at the beginning, in this particular case, okay, it had to be. I can tell you, it was the individual wanted to put together a Greek bakery, and but I tell you, poor Wanimi, I don't recall ever seeing a big Greek community, and he did not either. And he said, "I don't know." I said, "Well, why don't you start doing that?" He never opened the business. Okay, thanks God, he never opened the business. So you got to identify your target markets, and you got to identify how are you going to monitor that, and who's going to be your competition? How many other bakeries are there? Okay. In this particular case, as one of the things that I point out, I said, "How many Greek bakeries are there within around 10 miles?" Says, "I don't know, one. That's where I want to open one." I said, "Oh, very good." As I said, I keep repeating, he did not open it. So you got to look at the competition, and is what I call the spy. You got to be spy. You got to go there and analyze, buy something, test something. What do you think is good? And believe me, your common sense as a consumer goes a long way in determining the type of business that you're going to compete with. So any weakness that you find in that business, that is added. You put a book together. Oh, I don't do this, don't do this, do this, do it better. That is an important part of competition. When I used to run branches of banks, uh, I used to send the people to other banks to try to open an account to see how they were treated, how was it handled, what did they find was good or bad. They never opened it, but just to test it. And that was part of my research. Okay, if we were going to open a new branch somewhere, um, the suppliers, who are going to be your suppliers? Have you talking to your suppliers? Okay, how do they operate with a new business? And you ask them those questions. If I want to open a business, you will be one of my key suppliers. What kind of terms and conditions I will be expecting? Are you going to rely on foreign suppliers? That's a big problem. We have a customer right now that the supplier is primarily from China, and he has a problem bringing the raw material from China at this point. And so he's trying to now develop, how do I can do it domestically? Well, domestically, what am I going to do with the pricing? All those things, you got to take it into consideration. Uh, we talk about that, and we identify some ways he can do that, some ways he can be a little bit more competitive. Uh, and then you're going to talk about business risk. All that is your outside shell, the background that is going to allow you to develop pricing. But you need to have this business intelligence in and I would, if I was you, I would buy myself a book, one of those binders that you use in college that has different sections, and label one for marketing, one for accounting, one for uh, all the different sections that you sales, all the different section of your business. And every time you come up with an idea, put it there. You'll be surprised when you start going back and reviewing all these, the good ideas that will come to mind because something that you wrote by visiting one of the entities that will be your competitors. Uh, what very important, and you have to be objective on this. Analyze business risks up front. First, research tells you what are the sensitivities area of the industry right now. Okay, don't ignore those things, because you got to build your plan, not only your budget, but your pricing and your marketing plan around the business risks in the area, in your, I'm sorry, in your industry, not the area. There's also the area, but I'm more concerned with your industry. uh, the Then we're going to go also, again, talking about the big shell that it goes into pricing. What distribution channels you think you're going to have in your business? Okay, and uh, business to business. It could be a combination of all of it, by the way. Business to consumer. Are you going to use distributors? Are you going to use internet? Are you going to use uh, any other method that you think? And don't include word of mouth, by the way. That's not a distribution channel. Okay, could be a marketing tool, but not a distribution channel. So, but you got to know, because your plan has to be around these areas. For example, if you're going to concentrate primarily on internet, be prepared, because it could be pricey. If you're going to depend on an entity like Amazon, Amazon is pricey. And can you build that price in your can you build that cost in your price? Be careful. I have somebody who's in the garment business, manufactures upscale garments for babies. Okay, and we were discussing this particular issue last week, and he was telling me, I think I have to have less dependency on Amazon and more dependency on direct sales, because Amazon was getting costly for him and his pricing had to be elevated, and he was getting away from the competitors. So although the quality of his product is fantastic, there is a limit. There's like a rubber band. You're going to stretch it, eventually it's going to break. So be careful. Don't stretch it too far. And only you will know that. and you being conservative, you probably are not going to have, you're not going to allow it to go to the end. So check your distribution channel. Now we're going to uh, your markup. Well, how do I determine the markup on a product? Well, you have several components, and I'm going to talk about in general right now. First of all, you got to you know by all the research you've done approximately what's going to be the cost of putting a product for sale. Okay, that is one cost. This one that I was telling you, for example, and I'm reading, yeah, it has primarily is a direct labor because these people manufacture parts. Uh, that labor has health insurance, that's workman comp. Uh, they have another expense called health and safety of the factory, uh, payroll expenses, and so that's all related to labor. Labor is a major component in this particular business. In the business that you design, may not be the case. Then you have equipment repairs and maintenance, materials, tooling, and some work cannot be done in the shop. It has to be sent outside. All that, all that represented, okay, $6 for every dollar of sales that he generates. $6. Okay. Now, are you going to sell this product for $6? No, because you have something called administrative expenses below that. So, and the administrative expenses in his case was $8. Okay. And then you say, okay, another point, if you're in manufacturing, if you're not in the manufacturing, there are different methods of putting pricing. Okay. In the manufacturing, you have an issue that is very critical. And we have a guy in our crew that is fantastic at that. It's called efficiency. Okay. In efficiency, you have to know how many minutes of labor do you have available to you every single day. Well, I have so many minutes of labor. You discount the breaks, you discount the lunch, you discount X percentage because people are going to take it easy. They're not going to be running all the time to get the job done. And then on top of that, you say, my goal, once I discount all that, my goal is to operate at 85% of the capacity. Okay. So if I have, in this particular case, they have 686 hours, okay, uh, of availability of labor. Well, what we did is we discounted that to 85%. I'm sorry, I take it back. Discounted that to 81%. Uh, so, and the goal of this business to make more money is to build that efficiency up. It's almost impossible to run at 100% efficiency. Okay.
Well,
So,
and Gonzalo, I think you make some really important points that, when you're doing your pricing, you have all the costs that go into making the product or service that you're delivering, but then you have all of this overhead types of costs, your rent and all of those things. And then you've got to have this realistic view of how much you can actually produce, how much, if it's a restaurant, there's going to be waste, there's going to be downtime, and you have to account for that reality. But as you said, you also have to account for all these other things like insurance and rent and safety was one of them in that example you gave. So I think as entrepreneurs, we often think about what goes into the actual product we're producing, and we often forget about those other elements of costs that we have to recover.
uh, in the first analysis, I'm reading you the first analysis that I did on the company. We did subsequent improvement, but in this analysis, he was taking $6, okay, for every dollar of sales on top, on what is called the gross margin, and he was spending $8 for every dollar of sales in administrative cost. If you know mathematics well enough that $6 up here, $8 of expense, how much money is he making? Zero, nada. He was losing $2 for every dollar. Okay. When I show him that, he couldn't believe it. He says, well, what can I do? I said, well, number one, you have to reduce labor. labor is too high. You're not using, he was using with the assistance of another great guy we have in our group who is a Lean Sigma guy. And he went in there and he was able to cut two people right off the bat. So we brought the cost in line. Okay. Now he was not utilizing what he had to the maximum, improving that. Today he's running not quite what I think he had to be, but at least he's running $9, okay, on the top and $10 on the bottom. He's losing $1, and eventually we're going to get it to where he needs to be. But it is this is one of the guys who benefit from all the programs that the government put out to help the company with money to survive. This guy is surviving. So I told him, I said, it was a blessing. It was a blessing that this money came in. It will allow you to keep the company alive. So you have a year to keep it alive. So we're going to work on that. I put the whole, he couldn't do it. So I put the whole 2021 projection and business plan together for him. And now another problem is I cannot hold him to that number. If I hope he does, I hope he realizes that. He tells me every 2 weeks when we get together, oh yeah, I'll do it. Oh yeah, I'll do it. But in the meantime, he goes out and designs a machine, which is a 3D machine. He's become a 3D expert. He can design anything on 3D. And I already told him many times, which is not my role. I says, get out of this business. You are an engineer. You are to design for somebody who pays you nice amount of money, and you work 8 hours a day and go home on weekends. But no, that's not his love affair. His love affair is his business. He inherited from his grandfather. The
Well,
company.
I think what's important about that story too is what you said in the beginning, saying you have to kind of set up the expectations of what you want out of that business, how much money you want to make, what's your expectation of how much money the business is going to generate for you, and I know that we have, that there's some people out there who just want a hobby business, and
Yeah.
if they break even and make a little, that's fine. But then there's other people with aspirations saying, hey, this business has to pay my rent and has to provide a living for me, and
You keep in mind that the return on your business has two components. It's the profits that you make every year, and I'm using year as an example. And by sales growth and profit growth, the capital value of your business also appreciates. So when I say get 20, 25%, it's a combination of the two. How much is the value of my business appreciating? And you can tell that from the balance sheet. And how much am I making? The combination of the two, if you can get 20% a year, you're doing well. Uh, Anything north of that is, of course, better, but at the beginning, so try to keep that in mind. You have to manage the two components number, but don't begin a budget from the top and say how much money I'm going to sell. You got to start it from the bottom. How much money I want to make? Then how much expenses, administrative expenses can I afford? You cannot control, remember, you cannot control the cost of your sales. You cannot control raw material. You cannot control the people that you pay the salary. Yeah, you can reduce salaries, I mean, employees, but that is not easily done. So if the market says you're going to pay $15 an hour instead of $12 an hour, you got to adjust for that. So that part of it on the top, which is called the cost of goods, okay, you don't control that. That is completely out. So you need to adjust pricing to that, and you need to adjust operating expenses to that. Those two you control. You control pricing, and you control operating expenses. But you do not control cost of goods. As I was telling you before, that's in a restaurant. That's you have to up the price, and you got to go and sell it to the customers when they come in, because many of them are going to say, "Wow, you up the prices so much." I said, "Okay, keep in mind, this is what happened, blah blah blah." And most customers understand that, believe me. If you have checked the price of a hamburger at McDonald's a year ago and today, check those two. You will see the difference between the two. Okay, you will see some of them that went up $1.50 a unit, $1.50. So you say for the
Well,
hamburger, I say yeah. Okay, so
well, and that's another interesting point, Gonzalo, because so many small businesses, they wait to change their price until it's too late, right? If you raise it a little bit as you go, right, to keep up with your costs, you're a
yes,
lot better off.
and that's the advantage of reviewing your numbers as frequent as possible. Monthly is not that necessary, but quarterly, yeah. And if you see the cost of good moving up, okay, uh, do something. And you may say, well, what about if they go down? Be careful. Be careful. Don't bring your price down automatically or ignore it either. Okay? Because you says, oh, I'm making a ton of money now. I say, yeah, but your competition who provides a similar product, provides a similar service, is going to be cognizant of that price reduction. And that happens, for example, in the oil business. The price of oil goes up, the price of oil goes down. There are some gas stations that keep it at, I know there is a gas station here in Newbury Park, right off the freeway there, that always, I don't care what the price is anywhere, he's $4 and up a gallon. Always. Even when prices went down to $2.89, okay, he was $4. Okay. I used to finance his gas station when I was in the bank. He doesn't care. He says, his philosophy is, I don't need as many gallons, but I make the same amount of money. And he has another station that he competes in pricing. Okay, that is also in Oxnard, and he competes in pricing on that one. So he has two different models. So, but you have to know your business to do that. Keep that in mind. Uh, then you go into other strategies of pricing. Well, what pricing methodologies can I use if I'm going to bundle my products? Okay, that's now you're getting a little bit sophisticated in there. How much can I cut if instead of one unit I can sell 100 units to that customer? Okay, and that's what you see in some places, that people tell you, if you buy one, the price is X. If you want 50, the price is Y. Okay, and but you have to know that. Okay, you cannot arbitrarily say, I'm going to give you a 10% discount, which brings into another point. I don't want to get too much into that. Remember that doing all this, there is another thing called the non-cash expenses of your company. I'm sorry, they're cash expenses, but they don't appear in your profit and loss. It's called cash flow. Every time your sales go up, your accounts receivable goes up, your inventory goes up. You got to put money in those two kitties, so you're not making as much money. Okay, and you got to build that into your pricing. If you're going to give your clients 30 days to pay you, what is the cost of money to you of 30 days? Okay, you got to put that into your pricing. That's your cost.
In,
So
in, in fact, Gonzalo, in businesses that I've owned or managed, I've had situations where I took far less profit to get more cash flow. So I had certain
yeah,
clients that were there for cash flow, and certain clients that were there for margin. And I remember too, I was in I had a freight company, right? And I was in my mid 20s and I had my own freight company. But one of the things that oftentimes I do too is I would have to take less money at certain times of the year because I knew it took more effort to service the client. But if I service them well, I could make more money later on that year, right? They would allow me to collect my profits, but I had to be there when their peak seasons were. So I actually, had intentionally took less margin for that to maintain the customer.
one of the things, expanding on what Ray just said, you ought to know, as a business owner, you ought to know what is your cost of money. Okay. And your cost of money is not only the amount of money you borrow, is the amount of capital you have in the business, because that capital is probably worth today 3-4%. Okay. Uh, Now the cost of money, if you have a good line of credit, will be 5-6%. You put that together, it's called a blended cost of capital for your business. Now that blended cost of capital is X. Let's say it's 5%. Well, if it is 5% and you tell somebody that I'll give you 1% or 1.5% discount if you pay your account, your receivable, if you pay it in 10 days, I give you 1.5% discount. Well, when you bring that 5-6% blended cost of capital and into 10 days, you're going to make money by giving 1.5% discount to somebody on the receivables. So you have to keep that in mind. The same way for you paying your payables, which is primarily inventory. If they give you a discount of X, okay, by paying early and you have the cash to do it, why not? Take it. You're saving money. Okay, and all that ups to your cash flow. Cash flow is king. Cash flow in a business is king. A lot of customers don't realize that how important it is to pay attention to that. I'm a big advocate of cash flow. Okay, every time we see somebody coming in to borrow money from us, Ray has a director of lending that is the same way. We both subscribe to the same philosophy. That show me the cash. I think it was a movie on that. Show me the cash, okay? And some owners, they you could see that blank stare. What are you talking about? So it's fine. I enjoy sitting with them and walking them through their financial statements and showing the cash. And I said, look at if you give your clients a 1% discount or 1.5 in your receivable, this is your cost of capital. You're making money. You're making money. If you can get money ahead of what you would normally get of 30, 45 days, and God forbid if it goes into 60, 90 days, that's a different ballgame. You're becoming a finance company instead of a widget manufacturing company. And you don't want to do that. Trust me, you do not want to be a finance company.
Well, and that's so important to keep in mind. I remember I started a consulting company, and I did international trade consulting. And when I started the company, I had a full-time job, and then on the side, I had my business. And it took me about a year and a half to build that business up to where it was making money, right? So a year and a half, I'm making money. But then it took me a whole nother year to have the cash flow because I said, well, I'm making more than my job, but I can't quit my job because I've got my rent, I've got all these expenses every month. But sometimes some months I'll make a lot of money and sometimes I won't. So the cash flow isn't there. I remember it took a whole year for me to develop the cash flow where I could quit my job and just consult full time.
Don't set your pricing methodology based on theory. Please, you're going to read a lot of books. You're going to see a lot of information in the internet, and you're going to go in and say blah, 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 A through Z. Don't do that. Use common sense. Okay. Every rationale you use to do projection, to do capital planning, to do pricing, every rationale you use, put it down, write it down, because every quarter or every 6 months, you ought to go and revisit what you wrote down and don't write a book. Okay. Uh, so that's it. It is good to have, but you want to make it yours because it's your business and you're going to put, well, the competition made me do this, or uh, not made me, but uh, show me that this is a better way to do it, this and that and that. Write it down and you're going to revisit that. And when you revisit, you could say, wow, that was good. Oh, here, this is something I missed. I can add that now. And you keep improving your pricing methodology. So don't subscribe to any particular theory. The theory has to be your theory for your business at the time you're going to open your business, at the time you're reviewing what should you do with your business, and review that. I said at least every 6 months. If you could do it quarterly, it'd be even better. Is your money, is your capital, is your business. Do not ignore anything. Okay. If you have any questions, my presentation is over. Um, Ray only pays me for 30 minutes. I extended this to an hour. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. There's no compensation on this. I love to do this, and especially when involved Ray, because I have a lot of respect for him. And so, but I also have to eat dinner. And
Okay. So we won't keep you too long, but for a moment, I wanted to share my screen and just go over a template that I'll be giving the class. And
oh, good.
I have to modify it a little, but I just want to ask you for a couple comments on it. So bear with me here. Okay, so this is a super basic budget, and this is going to be part of your final project. The final project our class is going to hand in. And so one of the things you'll recognize, Gonzalo, is I borrowed from a document that you give your clients called a solicitation plan. And I didn't use the whole thing, but I'm wondering if you can just comment quickly on a couple of these elements.
Yeah. The important thing is, in any of this, don't write a book. You're writing to yourself something that it will be useful to you. Please keep that in mind. Okay. The simpler, the better. Okay. For something to be sophisticated doesn't have to be complicated. So you write your business. How do your business operates is important. You will be surprised once you put it in writing that you may realize that you're doing things in your business that are either duplications or have some omissions. So write your business, in enough detail, but not a book. I talk about these things in marketing. Define your market. What is the need for your product? What are your marketing initiatives? Okay. Who are your competitors? Always investigate the industry. We were talking about getting at the beginning to learn about the industry. That first research has to be part of your library all the time. You have to check what's going on in your industry, because besides giving you competition and all that, they tell you what's going on in the overall industry. And although might not be applicable to your level of business rating these days, because you will begin at a low level of revenues, but indirectly it affects you. The client demographics, you will learn big deal from the big guys. Believe me, if something is happening to Apple, and if you're going to go into that business, sooner or later you're going to see the repercussion of that. uh, how do you determine pricing? Remember, I was telling you before, pricing methodology is yours. Write down, how do you determine the pricing? How do you differentiate your business? I told you the story last time I spoke to you about the deli owner who owns 6 deli stores, big deli store in Los Angeles. The deli was recognized by the size of the sandwich and the quality of the meat. When the price of the meat went up, he had two choices: cut the size of the sandwich or increase the price of the meat by about $1.50. He chose reducing the price of the sandwich. He lost 50% of the clients. He did not know his clients. And when I convinced him to go and talk to some of his clients, he realized that the people were coming there not for pricing. They were coming there for the quality of the meat and the size of the sandwich. He said, if you would have raised it $2, we would have paid you $2. What is your brand? You want to create a brand. You want to create a brand and an image for your business. Okay. Brand recognition is very important, and do not underestimate that. Think about how many brands. When somebody says chicken, what comes to mind? When somebody says particular, item of clothing, who do you think? Okay. So you say, well, my small business maybe is not ready. Yes, you start building brand from the beginning. Okay. uh, Marketing message and utilization of social media. and you need to describe that. And again, this is simple for you right now. Don't write a book on these things. I talked to you already about the what if scenarios. Very important. And the reason that those are important, and don't write more than three. And this has to be critical. This has to be things that you feel can bring the business down to its knees. And the reason you want to identify that is because you want to have a strategy. As I said before, what if I'm physically incapacitated to run the company every day? Who's going to run it and how is going to run it? Where do I have the manual? Are the manual detailed enough for anybody to pick them up and run? Oh, I don't have any manuals. Well, start writing some manuals. So that's just the important thing of that is not just to say, me physically incapacitated, what are you going to do about it?
So another element of their final project is going to be a business model canvas, and I kind of simplified it, but they also have a more detailed template about it. But if you can give a little bit about your take about it.
Well, again, uh, an important part of the business, okay? Who are, Ray uses key partners. I use stakeholders. And when I write mine, who influence what's going to go on in my business? What activities happen? And these are major items, okay? What are the value propositions of my business? I touch a little bit with a different terminology on those. Customer relationship. How do I manage the customer relationship? Well, remember I told you about the channels that you're going to use and how are you going to promote to those channels. It may look like it's a little bit esoteric, a little bit of theory, but it's not. As I said before, and I keep repeating, write these things to you. You're not writing it to publish a book. Okay. You're not writing for a sophisticated super duper. You might be a sophisticated editor, but you're not writing for that. You're writing for yourself. Okay. What are the customer segment? These are very important elements of the business. And at the beginning, you may not have to put much in here, but as I told you, keep reviewing this. Don't write these things and put it in a shelf to collect dust. Many people during this pandemic realize that they never look at their business plan ever in the last 5-10 years of business. And I say, why? He said, oh, we didn't think it had any value. And I walked one of them specifically through a business plan. The reason is because about 10 years ago, this lady was in my class where she wrote a business plan, and I kept telling them, review it, review it. And I said, I never review it. And I brought the business plan back, and I said, did you do this? Oh, no, I never follow that. Did you do this? No, I never follow that. You know what would have happened if you would have followed that? Your business would have suffered, no doubt, but would not have been where it is right now, close to collapsing. So don't ignore those things. Okay, great.
So the other element in their final project, and I know we've gone over things like, cash flow analysis and balance sheet and all this, but for the purposes of this class, since we have a lot of different majors in the classes, I'm just going to ask them to fill out a very basic budget with some revenue streams and some basic expenses, as well as an area to put comments under each one of those expenses. So I'm wondering if you can comment on kind of this a little bit about what would make up a good 12-month budget.
You asking me?
Yes.
a conservative number. The whole thing, Ray, is predicated on the right. How do you arrive to that number? Okay, whatever you write in there, predicated on that number. I would say, what business is this, Ray?
Well, it could be any business of their choosing. But I remember one of the things you said earlier is, the assumption is probably going to be you're probably not going to be making much money in those first couple months because you're just starting. Or, I know I've seen in the past businesses that literally cut and paste their entire budget and all the numbers look the same. So I don't know if you can kind of speak to, kind of the realistic assumptions that you might put here,
Well,
regardless of the type of business.
better than that, I'm going to tell you the last plan that I helped a client build, and the plan, I guess it was good because this client got the loan of $250,000 from us to open a brand new business. This happened to be a business that will be dedicated to sale of wine and food. Okay, and these people came to me, total revenues on the first month of $30,000. I said, you fooling yourself. Okay, well, that revenue ended up being $16,000, and I'm rounding numbers here. From 30, I cut it to 16. Okay, and then like that, 2% of the sales, as you see, Ray has up there a percentage, 2% of the sales in the first month, 3% on the second month, 5% on the 7th month. You see, it's escalating. It's in a scale. Okay, and this company started with an operating profit, gross profit margin of 51% on the first month. Well, this company finished the year at a gross profit margin of 60%. Okay, because of that escalation. And so the first month they were in the red, $17,000. Second month, $16,000. Third month, 6,000. Fourth month, 1,000. All negative. Okay, and that's fine. You know why? Because they capitalize that amount of money at front, so they don't have to worry about, oh, am I going to be short of money? Personally, I think they're going to do better than that. But as Ray's director of lending and I like to do, we like to see conservative. He went to the loan committee with this plan and he got approved immediately because it was very reasonable. The people did a fantastic documentation as to how do they arrive to each of the numbers. It was very simple for me to finalize it for them, and so that's an example, Ray, and it's very live example because it happened last week.
Well, and one of the modifications I'm making to the template before I share it with the class, so I'm hoping to share it next week, and I think it was a great suggestion on your part, is include the percentages, a calculation so it'll show the percentages of each part of the budget. Because one of the things I know that you talk about a lot is the importance of common sizing
Right.
the financials, understanding the percentages of each thing that you put into there. And I don't know if you can speak to that super briefly.
The value of common sizing is some people are misled by saying my sales went up 20%. And I said, okay, so what happened to your expenses as a percentage of sales? Okay, this one went up 18%. The other one went up 25% as a percentage of sales. Bottom line, excuse me, you didn't make any money. And on top of that, I can show you that by your sales going up 20%, you had to put so many dollars in accounts receivables and you had to put so many dollars in inventory. Therefore, and then you have to pay so much in overtime for doing that. And that's not in your pricing. Overtime is not in your pricing right now. Okay, so how much money you made? Well, the profit and loss says that I lost $10,000. So going up 20% in sales cost you $10,000. That's what it did. Okay, so you gotta everything. So, but if you have a common size, okay, and your sales go up 20%, for example, rent will not go up, so that's great. But if your sales go down, keep in mind that that's a fixed cost. When you do a sales a comparison like that, you need to identify what are your fixed costs. Your fixed cost is a calculation of break even. You need to know the break even of your business. Okay, and that's a whole new subject to talk about break even. We don't even go there now. Okay, but break even is very, very important. I mentioned last time 3 things you need to know if you own a business. How much cash do you have? not in the bank. How much cash do you have? Who owes you money is not paying you within 30 days? And did you break even this period? And if one of those things is not happening, run and fix it.
Well, I don't want to keep you too long, Gonzalo, but does anyone in the class have any questions for Gonzalo?